I answered my fiancée's phone while she was in the shower. A man said, "I miss your naked body, babe." I didn't hang up. I walked to the bathroom door, and when I let her answer, I was standing in the kitchen rinsing a coffee mug when Isabel's phone lit up on the counter. It vibrated once, slid slightly on the stone surface, then stopped. I would not have noticed it at all if her phone had not been face up. She usually kept it face down. That was one of those habits you register without assigning meaning to it, like the way someone always locks a door twice or always checks their reflection before leaving the house. The screen showed a name I did not recognize. Ryan. The shower was running. Isabel had been in there for several minutes. Steam was already creeping out into the hallway, carrying the faint scent of eucalyptus from the soap she liked. We were not late for anything. It was a normal evening, the kind that happens when life feels settled enough that you stop watching it closely. The phone vibrated again. This time it kept vibrating. I picked it up without thinking. We had answered each other's phones before. There had never been a rule about it. I assumed it was something mundane, maybe a work call, maybe a wrong number. I swiped to answer. I did not say anything. I was still half distracted, already turning toward the sink to set the mug down. A man's voice came through the speaker, relaxed and familiar, like he had done this many times before. "I miss your naked body, babe." There was no pause after he said it. No hesitation, no uncertainty. He sounded comfortable, almost bored, like this was part of a routine he expected to continue. I did not hang up. For a brief moment, my body reacted before my mind did. My stomach tightened. My shoulders stiffened. Then everything went very still. I remember noticing how quiet the apartment suddenly felt, how even the refrigerator seemed louder than it should have been. I held the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen again, as if the name might change into something that made sense. Ryan. He spoke again, still assuming the line was open for the right person. "You there? I've got like 10 minutes before I have to head out." I turned and walked toward the bathroom. The hallway was short. The door was closed but not locked. Steam was curling out from the bottom, fogging the mirror on the wall beside it. I could hear the water hitting tile, steady and loud. I knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for an answer. Isabel was behind the glass shower door, her hair pinned up, one hand resting on the wall. She turned when she saw me, surprised, then slightly annoyed, like I had interrupted something trivial. I held the phone up and extended it toward her, screen facing her, speaker still on. "It's for you," I said. Her eyes dropped to the phone. The color drained from her face so quickly it was almost impressive. She did not reach for it at first. She just stood there, frozen, water running over her shoulders. Ryan's voice filled the bathroom, louder now because of the echo. "Hey, did you hear me?" Isabel swallowed. She looked at me, then back at the phone, then back at me. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Hi," she said, finally taking the phone from my hand. Her voice sounded wrong, too controlled, like she was trying to compress panic into something manageable. "You can't talk right now." There was a pause on the other end. I watched her face as Ryan processed the shift in tone. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Where are you?" "I'll call you later," she said quickly. I stayed where I was, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. I did not raise my voice. I did not step closer. I simply watched. Ryan laughed lightly. "Why are you acting weird?" Isabel glanced at me again. Her eyes were wide now, and something else was there too, something sharper than fear. "Calculation. I said I'll call you," she repeated, then ended the call. The bathroom felt too small suddenly. Steam pressed against my skin. Water continued to run. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. She set the phone down on the counter like it might explode. "That was not what it sounded like," she said. I nodded once, slowly. "Okay." She blinked, clearly thrown by the response. She had been expecting something louder, something she could push against. "I mean it," she continued. "He's just—" I raised a hand, not aggressively, just enough to stop the sentence from forming. "You don't need to explain right now." That unsettled her more than anger would have. She shut off the water and stepped out of the shower, grabbing a towel and wrapping it around herself. Her movements were fast, uneven. I walked back into the kitchen and sat down at the table. My mind was already moving ahead, sorting through details I had ignored for months. Late nights that never came with clear explanations. Her sudden interest in keeping certain finances separate until after the wedding. The way she had delayed signing the prenup twice, citing stress, then travel, then timing. She came out a few minutes later, dressed quickly, hair still damp. She sat across from me, gripping the edge of the table. "You're overreacting by being quiet," she said. "Say something." "I will," I replied. "Just not yet." Her jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous." "You heard one sentence." "I heard familiarity," I said. "I heard expectation. And I heard someone who assumed he had access." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. I stood up and walked to my office corner, where my laptop was already open. I logged into the account Isabel technically had access to but rarely used. There was a scheduled transfer queued for the next morning, a large one, earmarked for a vendor connected to a renovation project we had discussed loosely but never finalized. I canceled it. From the kitchen, Isabel watched me, her expression shifting from defensive to alarmed. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Pausing things," I said. "You can't just." "I can," I replied. "And I am." Her phone buzzed again on the table. A message notification flashed briefly before disappearing. I did not need to see it to know who it was from. I returned to my seat. "Who is Ryan?" I asked. She exhaled slowly, as if choosing a strategy. "Someone from before." "Before what?" "Before us." "That doesn't match what I heard," I said. "People from before don't talk like that." She leaned back, folding her arms. "You're making this into something it isn't." I smiled faintly, more out of habit than amusement. "You postponed signing the prenup again last week." Her eyes flickered. "Just for a second. That has nothing to do with this." "You asked me about power of attorney 3 days ago," I continued. "Out of nowhere. I was just asking. You contacted a real estate agent last month." She stiffened. "How do you know that?" I shrugged. "The same way I know you asked about selling this place after the wedding." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence stretched. Outside, a car alarm chirped and stopped. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor laughed. Finally, she spoke, quieter now. "You're jumping to conclusions." "No," I said evenly. "I'm connecting them." Her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it instinctively, then stopped herself when she saw me watching. She set it back down, face down this time. "I didn't plan for you to find out like this," she said. That was the first honest sentence she had spoken all night. I stood again, walking toward the bedroom to grab my jacket. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To make sure this doesn't get messier than it already is," I replied. She followed me to the door. "Daniel, you're blowing this up." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that evening. "No," I said. "You already did." I just answered the phone. When I stepped into the hallway, my phone was already in my hand. I scrolled to Mason's contact and hit call. He answered on the second ring. "I need you to freeze anything connected to Isabel," I said as soon as he picked up. "Tonight." There was a pause. "What happened?" "I'll explain later," I said. "But trust me." He did not argue. I hung up and stood there for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of Isabel moving around inside the apartment, probably calling Ryan back, probably trying to regain control. The wedding was 3 weeks away. By the end of the night, I already knew it was not going to happen. And this was just the beginning. I did not go far that night. I walked the length of the block, turned the corner, then stopped under a streetlight that flickered as if it could not decide whether to stay on. My phone vibrated again and again in my hand. I did not check it. I did not need to. The pattern was obvious. Panic always comes in waves before it becomes something uglier. I called Mason back instead. He answered immediately this time. His voice was steady, the same tone he used when something was wrong, but still fixable. "Everything tied to Isabel is frozen," he said. "Transfers, authorizations, vendor access. Nothing moves without you." "That's good," I replied. "I need you to pull anything that shows her touching company-related resources, even indirectly." There was a pause. "This is serious." "It already was," I said. "I just caught up to it." I ended the call and finally checked my messages. There were 14 missed calls from Isabel, followed by a series of texts that moved quickly from confusion to reassurance to anger. I did not respond. I went back upstairs, unlocked the apartment door, and walked in like I still lived there. Isabel was in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. She stopped speaking the moment she saw me. Whoever she was talking to, she ended the call without explanation. "You can't just disappear," she said. "We need to talk." "We already did," I replied, setting my jacket down. "Now I'm going to listen." She frowned. "Listen to what?" "To what happens when I stop filling in the gaps for you." Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, then placed it face down on the coffee table with deliberate care. "You're acting like I planned something," she said. I sat across from her. "You did." She shook her head, almost smiling, like she was talking to someone being unreasonable. "You're spiraling." I leaned forward. "Then help me understand why Ryan thought he had 10 minutes before heading out. Why he sounded bored. Why he assumed access." She did not answer right away. Instead, she stood and walked to the window, crossing her arms, staring out at the city like it might give her instructions. "He's nothing," she said eventually. "That's not true," I replied. "Nothing doesn't speak with entitlement." She turned back to me. "You're twisting this." "I'm removing distortion," I said. "There's a difference." The next morning, I woke before she did. Or at least before she pretended to. I showered, dressed, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I did not snoop through her phone. I did not need to. People who plan do not leave chaos behind. They leave structure. Emails were easier. I accessed the shared wedding folder first. Vendor timelines, seating charts, deposits. Everything looked normal until I noticed duplicate inquiries. Same venue, different dates. Same caterer, different head counts. Someone had asked about a second event, framed vaguely, like a corporate gathering. It took less than 10 minutes to trace the email address used. It was not hers. It was Ryan's. I called the venue. They confirmed the inquiry without hesitation. The contact had presented himself as working on behalf of a joint post-wedding celebration. Something informal, something flexible. No contract had been signed, but availability had been discussed. I thanked them and ended the call. When Isabel finally came into the kitchen, she looked tired but composed, like someone who had decided on a narrative overnight. "You stayed," she said. "For now," I replied. She poured coffee, her hands shaking slightly. "I didn't sleep. That makes two of us." She sat down across from me. "I don't know what you think you uncovered, but I know you were planning a second event," I said calmly. "I know Ryan contacted vendors using language that implied authority. I know you delayed legal paperwork while increasing financial access." Her face went still, not shocked, calculating. "That doesn't mean what you think," she said. "It means exactly what it means," I replied. She exhaled sharply. "You're connecting dots that don't belong together." "Then separate them," I said. "Right now." She could not. Later that afternoon, I met Mason at the office. He had printed documents spread across the conference table, neatly arranged. The look on his face told me everything before he spoke. "Ryan used our company name as a reference," he said. "Not officially, but enough to imply backing. He applied for a short-term loan last month." I stared at the paper. "Approved?" "Conditionally," Mason replied. "Pending verification." I nodded. "Pull it. It'll raise flags." "It should," I said. That evening, I called Ryan. He answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said, casual, confident. "I was wondering when you'd call." I did not respond to the familiarity. "You used my company's name." There was a brief pause. She said it was fine. "That was your first mistake," I replied. He laughed lightly. "You're upset. I get it. You think this is about emotion," I said. "That's your second mistake." His tone shifted slightly. "Look, man, whatever she told you." "She told me enough?" I interrupted. "And you told me the rest." Another pause. This one longer. "You're not going through with the wedding," he said, more statement than question. "No," I replied. He sighed. "That's inconvenient." "For you?" I said. "Not for me." He went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. "She said you were predictable." I smiled faintly. That was her third mistake. I ended the call before he could respond. The next day brought fallout. Lauren reached out, asking to meet. Isabel's longtime friend. The one who had always been present, but never central. We met at a cafe near her office, neutral ground. She looked nervous. "She asked me to lie," Lauren said after a few minutes. "About when Ryan came back into her life." I nodded. I assumed. "She said it was temporary," Lauren continued. "That once the wedding happened, things would settle." "Settle into what?" I asked. Lauren hesitated. "Into security." That word landed exactly where it should have. By the end of the week, Isabel's tone changed again. Less defensive, more desperate. She tried to reframe everything as confusion, as poor timing, as something salvageable if handled quietly. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I let the structure collapse on its own. Vendors began calling her instead of me. Questions she could not answer. Timelines she could not explain. Ryan stopped calling her altogether. One evening, she finally broke. "You're ruining everything," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm stepping out of the way." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. That night, I packed a bag. Not to leave forever, just to give consequences room to breathe. And the web kept moving. I did not disappear after packing that bag. I stayed close enough to watch the structure fail in real time. Distance does not always mean absence. Sometimes it sharpens perspective. I moved into a short-term rental across town, something functional and anonymous. The kind of place no one associates with permanence. Isabel noticed immediately, of course. She texted, then called, then escalated into messages that tried to sound reasonable while carrying an undercurrent of threat. I did not respond. Silence was not a tactic. It was a byproduct of clarity. Mason kept me informed. Vendors were calling the office asking who had authority to make decisions. Accounts payable flagged inconsistencies. A supplier asked why a name they had never dealt with before was suddenly presenting himself as connected to our firm. The answers were simple. He was not. And now that was documented. Isabel tried to regain footing by accelerating things she could no longer control. She scheduled a pre-wedding tasting she could not cancel without raising alarms. Family, close friends, and 2 vendors would be present. She invited me as if nothing had changed. I accepted. The tasting took place at the venue's smaller event space, all soft lighting and neutral tones designed to make decisions feel pleasant. Isabel arrived early, already in motion, greeting people, laughing too loudly, touching arms as she spoke. Control through charm. I had seen it work before. When I walked in, conversations paused just long enough to register tension. She turned, saw me, and smiled like we were still aligned. That smile held for about 3 seconds before her eyes searched my face for confirmation she would not get. We sat across from each other at the long table. The coordinator began explaining options, costs, timelines. Isabel nodded at everything, agreeing too quickly, like she wanted to rush past the details. Then Ryan walked in. He did not hesitate at the door. He walked straight toward the table, confident, relaxed, as if he belonged there. Isabel froze. For a split second, her composure cracked completely. She had not planned for this. Ryan pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "Hope I'm not late," he said, smiling broadly. Traffic was a mess. The room went quiet. I stood up. "This is Ryan," I said calmly, addressing the table. "He's someone Isabel has been coordinating alternative plans with." Isabel turned to me sharply. "What are you doing?" "Clarifying," I replied. Ryan laughed, uneasy now. "Man, you don't need to make this weird." "It already is," I said. "You just arrived at the wrong moment." The coordinator glanced between us, confused. "Should I step out?" "No," I said. "Please stay." Isabel's hands were trembling on the table. "This is inappropriate." "Then explain," I said. "Explain why he contacted this venue separately. Explain why he used language implying authority. Explain why he assumed access." Ryan's smile faded. "I don't know what she told you, but..." "She told me enough," I said. "And you told me the rest." A murmur rippled through the table. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Isabel's mother looked at her, then at me, then back at her again, eyes narrowing. "This isn't what it looks like," Isabel said quickly. "Then make it look like something else," I replied. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No explanation landed correctly anymore. The timelines were wrong. The overlaps were obvious. Lauren sat at the far end of the table, staring down at her glass, avoiding everyone's eyes. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Look, this doesn't need to be public. It became public when you walked in," I said. "That was your decision." The coordinator quietly gathered her papers and excused herself. The damage was already done. Isabel stood abruptly. "We're done here." "No," her mother said, voice sharper than anyone expected. "We're not." Silence followed. By the end of that meeting, no decisions were made. No contracts were reaffirmed. Everyone left with questions they did not have answers to. Ryan tried to talk to me outside. "She told me you were controlling," he said. "That you'd fold once things got uncomfortable." I looked at him, really looked at him. "You mistook stability for weakness." He scoffed. "She chose me." "No," I said. "She used you." That landed harder than anything else I could have said. His confidence faltered. Just for a moment. The next few days unraveled fast. Ryan's loan application was formally flagged. An inquiry began. He called Isabel repeatedly. She stopped answering. Panic does that. It makes people cut loose ends they once valued. Isabel turned on me publicly then. She told friends I had overreacted, that I had embarrassed her deliberately. Some believed her. Most did not. Too many details no longer lined up. Lauren finally told the truth to a group chat she could not retract. She admitted Isabel had been planning contingencies, backups, and exits long before the engagement became public. Screenshots circulated. Not dramatic ones. Practical ones. Lists. Timelines. Calculations. That was worse. Isabel came to my rental unannounced one night. She stood outside the door, knocking softly at first, then harder. When I opened it, she looked smaller somehow. Less certain. "You've made your point," she said. "I didn't make anything," I replied. I answered a phone. She stepped inside anyway, pacing. "Ryan is spiraling. He's saying things. He's blaming me." "He should," I said. "You don't understand," she snapped. "If this goes any further." "It already has," I interrupted. She stopped pacing. "You could stop it." I shook my head. "I don't control consequences. I just stopped preventing them." She stared at me like that was an insult. The next morning, the venue sent formal notice. Without reaffirmation, the date would be released. Deposits would be forfeited based on contractual responsibility. Isabel's signature was on those clauses, not mine. Ryan lost access to credit within 48 hours. His calls became desperate, then angry, then non-existent. People like him thrive on assumed leverage. Once it disappears, so do they. Isabel's family stopped returning her calls. By the end of the week, the wedding no longer existed anywhere except in conversations that avoided using the word canceled. And still, this was not over. Because when people lose control, they do not always retreat. Sometimes they lunge. And Isabel was running out of room. The first official consequence arrived by email at 7:12 a.m. It was short, clinical, and impossible to argue with. The venue confirmed the release of the date. The deposits were forfeited under the cancellation clause tied to the signer of record. Isabel's name appeared on every line that mattered. Mine did not. I forwarded the email to Mason without comment. He replied a minute later. Clean. That word stayed with me longer than it should have. Isabel called an hour later. I let it ring until it stopped. Then she called again. Then again. I answered on the fourth attempt, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because there was nothing left to protect her from. They're blaming me, she said immediately. No greeting. No setup. All of them. They're reading the paperwork, I replied. You knew this would happen. Yes, I said. That's why I stopped it. Her breathing was uneven. I could hear movement in the background, drawers opening, closing. Someone who had lost control always tried to create the illusion of motion. Ryan is in trouble, she said. Serious trouble. I said nothing. He keeps calling, she continued. He says investigators contacted him. He says your company. My company didn't do anything, I interrupted. He did. You could make it go away, she said. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about how she still saw me. Not as a person, not as a former partner, but as a system she believed she could access if she applied the right pressure. No, I said calmly. I can't. And even if I could, I wouldn't. Her voice cracked. You're destroying my life. I exhaled slowly. You built this version of it. She hung up. By noon, the fallout had reached places Isabel could no longer influence. Ryan's loan inquiry had escalated into a formal review. Misrepresentation. Inflated references. Implied backing that did not exist. None of it involved emotion. None of it required my participation beyond confirmation that he had never been authorized to act on our behalf. He texted me once. This wasn't the deal. I did not respond. Lauren reached out later that day, asking if we could talk. I agreed. We met at the same cafe as before. She looked exhausted. She thought she could manage everyone, Lauren said quietly. She always does. Did, I corrected. Lauren nodded. Her parents cut her off this morning. That was new. Isabel's family had always been pragmatic, supportive as long as stability remained intact. Once credibility cracked, their backing disappeared with it. She called me screaming, Lauren continued. Said you turned everyone against her. I stirred my coffee. I didn't talk to anyone who didn't already have questions. Lauren watched me carefully. You're not angry. I said. Now I'm done being surprised. The next few days unfolded without drama, which made them worse for Isabel. There was no spectacle she could latch onto, no single event she could point to as unfair. Just a steady sequence of doors closing. The apartment was listed, not sold. Listed. She could not afford it alone, and no one wanted to co-sign. Friends offered couches, not solutions. The kind of help that came with expiration dates. Ryan disappeared completely. Not metaphorically. Literally. His social accounts went dark. His number disconnected. Word spread quietly that he was being advised to stay unavailable while things were sorted. People who relied on charm always underestimated how quickly it stopped working once paperwork entered the room. Mason and I finalized internal reviews. Every process Isabel had touched was documented, audited, and reassigned. No accusations. No public statements. Just structure correcting itself. I retrieved the last of my things from the apartment on a Tuesday afternoon. Isabel was not there. A note sat on the counter, handwritten, messy. We could have fixed this. I left it where it was. The final conversation came a week later. Isabel showed up at my office without warning. Security called before letting her through. I told them to send her up. She looked different. Not ruined. Just exposed. No rehearsed composure, no strategic softness. Just someone who had miscalculated and was out of options. You're letting this go too far, she said, standing in front of my desk. There is no direction anymore, I replied. Things just move. She laughed bitterly. You're pretending this is neutral. It is, I said. Neutrality just feels hostile when you're used to control. She stepped closer. I made mistakes. Yes, I said. You're not innocent. I never claimed to be, I replied. Just honest once it mattered. She stared at me for a long moment, searching for leverage that was no longer there. Ryan said you planned this, she said. I shook my head. I answered a phone. Her shoulders dropped slightly. That was the moment it finally reached her. Not the money, not the wedding, not the reputation. The simplicity of it. That nothing elaborate had been required. That everything collapsed because she assumed I would look away. I need help, she said quietly. I stood. Then you should ask someone who still owes you something. She left without another word. The engagement ended officially 2 days later. Paperwork filed. Assets separated. No public announcement, just quiet confirmation through absence. Invitations expired and used. Questions faded. Ryan's situation concluded the following month. Charges were not dramatic, just thorough. He settled quietly and relocated somewhere smaller, Somewhere anonymity felt like safety. Isabel moved back with family temporarily, then into a rental she could afford on her own. Her professional network thinned. People remembered. Not loudly. Permanently. As for me, I did not celebrate. I returned to routines. Work. Sleep. Stability earned instead of assumed. Friends noticed I was lighter, not happier, but unburdened. Sometimes I thought about that moment in the kitchen. The phone vibrating on the counter. The decision not to hang up. Everything that followed felt inevitable after that. Not because I planned it. Because once the truth entered the room, nothing else could stay standing.